Hi everyone, welcome back to Cumberland Conversations, stories that shape us. Today we welcome Tiffany Felkner. Tiffany, you volunteered to share your story after hearing Amy's, and so I know you have a story to share, and we are excited to hear it this afternoon. So start it off. Tell us what God has been doing in your life and how God is shaping your story.
He's actually been doing a lot in my life, especially the last 6.5 years. A lot of people know, but I haven't shared it publicly, and so I'd like to do that today, that I'm a breast cancer survivor.
Wow.
In September, it'll be 7 years, so I just wanted to kind of take the time to share that with other people, because people don't talk about it a lot, and then some people overshare, and so I didn't want to advertise it. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. There was never a doubt in my mind that God would not pull me through and heal me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to be a number, and I did not want to be a pity case. You know, I wanted to be able to share the things that I've experienced and just pray that it helps someone else with their journey.
Okay, all right. Well, obviously it is a part of your faith journey, so tell us how the things that have happened, tell us like how God has worked through that.
I can honestly say I've been a Christian as long as I can remember. My mother made sure I went to church, that I learned about God and Jesus and the Bible, and my mother is a very godly woman, and I've always admired her spiritual realm and the love that she has for God, and so I feel like she has instilled that in me and in my brothers the best that she could. And my dad believed in God, and he didn't go to church with us on Sunday, but we knew he believed in God, and he would have conversations with us occasionally, about
Mm-hmm.
that. When I was 13, we had a one of those plays that go to all the churches, and so I was saved at 13,
Okay.
and I came to know Jesus as my personal Savior then, and so my life really started to change then, because I don't know, it just clicked at that time, and it was like I knew I could talk to God at any given point in time if I had any issues. And so I've just always had, I think my faith has always been very strong. I'm not going to say that it hasn't wavered, but
Sure.
I've tried really hard to be a good Christian. I'll be the first to admit I sin every day. I'm not perfect, but I've tried to also instill God and the Bible in my own children, and I always said when they were growing up, if they only remembered the Lord's Prayer, I just wanted them to know that. So if they were ever in a situation where they didn't know what to pray, they would at least know the Lord's Prayer. And so all three of them remember that. They're now all adults, and they still talk about that from time to time, and how much they do appreciate that. But my story kind of begins in 2015, in December of 2015. My husband and I were living in Indiana. We had moved away from Dyer County about, I guess about 9 years previous to that, for his job, and we had moved around a couple of times and ended up landing in Indiana at that time in 2015. I had received a call from my mom that my dad hadn't felt good that day, and he thought he had the flu, and my dad was well known for self-diagnosing, and so he had just asked her to go to the store and get him, some over-the-counter medication. He wasn't one that you could tell him what to do. It was his decision or nothing. And so about the only person that could get him to do things was my brother Jeff Burns. And so I told my mother, when I talked to her, I said, you really do need to call Jeff. and have him take Dad to the hospital, because if he's been in the bed sick for a few days, you know, he needs to go. So he took him to the hospital, and they tested him for the flu, and he did not have the flu. Unbeknownst to us, he had been having many heart attacks.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, my father passed away. He had a massive heart attack. And
While he was at the doctor?
while he was at the emergency room in Jackson, yeah. And my mom didn't go with Jeff to take him to the doctor because, you know, this was pre-COVID, and you just, you know, we thought he had the flu, and she could get over there in 45 minutes and it would be fine. But unfortunately, Jeff was there alone when my father passed away. So it was very devastating to our family to lose my dad. He was 76 years old, and just, you know, had a toothless grin that everybody knew and loved, and the best laugh, and, you know, so that was the start of my journey in 2015. You know, I was starting to mourn the death of my father. And then about 40 days later, coming into 2016, my husband, Eric, his father, Dan, he got sick because of, I think, a skin cancer that he had removed, like on his face somewhere. And he was a kidney transplant patient, and had some reaction to the medication they had put him on. So they put him in the hospital in Memphis and just had complications from it. And unfortunately, he passed away as well. So within 40 days, Eric and I both were dealing with the loss of our fathers. So it was just a lot to deal with. They were two great men. My father-in-law was an amazing man, just loved life and gave his life to the church. And they just, you know, instilled so much love and family into us, and we just loved him, you know. So after my father passed away, my mother and I had a conversation, my brothers and I had a conversation with my mother, and we felt like it would be best if my mother came to live with me. She had always been here in Dyer County, except for maybe once when I was a year old. But she came to live with us in Indiana, and so it was so hard for me to watch her mourn my father and not be in her home and not have, you know, her family around her. But I was trying my best to be strong for her. So probably about a month after my father-in-law died, I went in for a normal checkup with my doctor, and he ordered a mammogram because I was 45, and according to him, I had very dense breast tissue, and so he just wanted to keep a check on it. I'd never had any issues, but so we did. I went in and I had a mammogram, and the radiologist called me, you know, into his office after I did it, and he said, I'm kind of concerned, but not so much. You know, I just want to put it on your radar that you have 3 little dots of calcification, maybe the size of a pencil lead, just 3 little dots. I think it's fine, but why don't you come back in 6 months and let's do just, you know, a diagnostic mammogram just to be safe. My doctor agreed. It was fine. So that spring and summer, I spent just about every day working out and running because I was training for a half marathon. My goal was to do it in the honor of my father and my father-in-law. And so I started noticing that summer that just really my time wasn't getting any better, and my philosophy was not, I got to hurry up and finish this race and I'm going to win with, you know, an hour and whatever time. My philosophy was I just wanted to finish. And so I had done a couple in the past and had done well with them and finished an okay time. I wasn't in the last place, and I wasn't in the first place, but you know, it was a good mental thing for me, and I enjoyed doing it with some friends. And so I was training that spring and summer, and just that summer I just kept thinking, why am I so tired? Why can I not, you know, pick up the pace? You know, just issues like that. And in August, first part of August, I'd gotten up for work and gotten in the shower and noticed I had a lump. It had not been there. a week before, 2 weeks before. I had not noticed it. And of course I was a little shaken when I felt it, because I was like, what is that? And do I just have a swollen gland? What is it? So I didn't tell my husband because I didn't want to freak him out. So I went on to work and decided to call the doctor, and he said, I want you to come in tomorrow. We're going to do, your diagnostic exam, which, by the way, was almost 6 months to the day when I found the tumor.
Oh, wow.
So I went in to have it, and sure enough, there was a tumor there. Had nothing to do with the calcifications that they had found in February. So I kind of felt like, looking back on it, it was just kind of like a little flag coming up from God saying, hey, I just want you to be on the lookout. Because I don't know that, even though I'd had the mammogram in February, if nothing had showed up, I don't know that I would have recognized it to be on the lookout for it. Even though it was the size of my thumb.
Wow.
And it was right in, inside, like where your arm bends.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was really no denying what it was. The doctor ordered a couple of biopsies, had those done, and unfortunately it came back as cancer, which was very devastating to me at 45.
Absolutely.
I was a mother. I was a grandmother. The only child I had left at home was Maddie, and at that time Maddie was in 8th grade. And so she was just kind of going through the whole hormonal teenage, just kind of getting an attitude a little bit, and just trying to figure out who she was, and so there was some push and pull there, just from her being in middle school, and that sort of thing, and so I had to be very careful about how I addressed it with her.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being a female. But the day that I found out I had cancer, I tried to call my husband, and of course he was in a meeting. He's always in a meeting. And so couldn't get him. So I thought, well, I'm going to call my best friend. She's a nurse, and so I thought, I'm going to call her because she'll know what to tell me. She did not answer the phone either. So I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't fall apart, because at the time I worked at an elementary school in the library. So I thought, I cannot fall apart in front of all these kids, because they're going to be like, what is wrong with you? So I went to the principal's office, and luckily she was in her office, and she was the nicest lady, and she allowed me to sit in her office and cry until my best friend called me. And then she said, I think you're gonna be fine. She didn't even say I think. She was just like, you're gonna be fine. We're gonna get you taken care of. You're gonna see great doctors, and this is gonna be fine. And so the principal was super nice, and she was like, why don't you leave early and just kind of get your thoughts together, and and we'll talk tomorrow. So in the meantime, my husband calls me back, and the doctor had called and said, can you come in to the office around 4? We'd like to sit down and talk with you. And so I picked Maddie up from school. I didn't really say anything to her about it. I think she kind of felt like something was off, and that she knew. And so I took her home and left her with my mom, and Eric met me at the doctor's office, and we sat down with my doctor, and he confirmed that yes, it was cancer. And of course Eric said, if this was your wife, what would you suggest? Honestly, I don't want any,
It's a great question.
BS about it. I want to know, if this was your wife, how would you treat her? And so he suggested an oncology clinic that was in Evansville, Indiana, which was about an hour south of us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never been to Evansville, it is about the size of Jackson, maybe a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have wonderful doctors down there. And so I went and met with that oncologist to get, my diagnosis. But the day that I was officially diagnosed, when we left the doctor's office, they had asked us to meet with a lady over at the hospital, which was across the street from the clinic. And she was kind of like a coordinator for the cancer center there, but they didn't really so much have a cancer center there. You really had to go to a bigger place, you know. But she instantly like threw all these pamphlets at me about breast cancer, and all I saw was pink, just pink, pink, pink. And she told me that I had to pick my fight song, and that, you know, she was just almost like slamming it down my throat. And I was like, I'm just trying to come to the realization that I have cancer, and you want me to pick my fight song, and you want me to wear pink. No, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of to get angry, and so I knew that was not going to be a good look for me. So Eric and I decided to leave, and I knew I didn't want to go home right away. And so he said, "What do you want to do? Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I want to go to church." And so luckily our pastor was there, and he let me in the back door, and he wanted to know what was going on, and we told him. I immediately went to the altar, and I asked God to take it. I knew at that given point in time that I had to leave it with God, because I couldn't do this by myself, and I couldn't ask my family to go through it with me without God present in it. So we stayed at church for a little while, and we prayed and we cried, and got in the car, and Eric said, "Do you want to go home?" And I said, "I still can't go home." And there was a little lake about maybe 15 minutes from us, just a little small fishing lake, and it was always so beautiful where it was located, and I said, "Please take me there." And so when we got there, the sun was setting, and I did take a picture of it. It was the most beautiful sunset I'd ever seen. It was blue and pink and orange. I mean, it was just like, it was just painted on the sky. It was gorgeous. And I just stood there looking at the water, and I knew at that point I just had a release to me, and it was, I know it was a God thing, and I knew I was going to be taken care of. So, you know, we left there, and I just was a lot more calm, and we went home and told my mom and Maddie, and it was kind of odd because Maddie had a best friend at the time who had just recently lost her grandmother to breast cancer. And so I had not told Maddie that I had been going to the doctor and that I was having these tests. But the day we went in and told her, I said, "We have something to tell you. You know, I've been going to the doctor some." And she looked me dead in the eye, and she said, "Do you have breast cancer?" She was 13.
Wow. And
so that kind of made me sink down in my chair a little bit, because I thought, how does she know that? You know, but kids, you know, are pretty intuitive. So
absolutely.
But anyway, we got through telling her she was fine, and of course my mother was pretty upset, because here she had just lost her husband, and was she gonna possibly lose her only daughter, her youngest child?
Yeah.
And so within a few weeks, it didn't seem like it took any time. I had an appointment with my oncologist in Evansville. I sat down with her, and I will be honest, I was still in shock and just not sure what to think or what to believe, or you know, who to turn to, because I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't really want to tell very many people, so the people that I told, I trusted tremendously.
Sure.
And so one of Maddie's friends, her mom, had called, and she meant no harm, but she said to me, "I have a friend who has a cousin who has had breast cancer. Can she call you?" And then that kind of became about more and more, with people sending me messages, and you know, my sister's mother-in-law's aunt, you know, whatever, has gone through it. You know, here's their information, and I was like, I don't need that. If I was going to go through the journey, I wanted someone that I actually knew, and that I actually thought was interested in what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And not just because, oh, you've got breast cancer, I've got breast cancer too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, you know, if you get a mosquito bite.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Yes.
So, I was very, very fortunate to get placed with a doctor in Evansville. Her name was Dr. Ziegler, and she was about my age, maybe a little older. Wonderful, wonderful woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was a godly woman, and she let you know it from the get-go. She sat down in a chair, did not stand in front of me, did not hover over me, gave me a hug when she walked in the room, sat down in a chair, and proceeded to explain how she was going to save my life. And I believed every word she said.
Wow.
She suggested a surgeon for me to meet with because we weren't sure exactly if I was going to have a mastectomy, a lumpectomy, what was going to happen.
Sure.
So I met with the surgeon, and after she saw the biopsy results, she said, we can't do a lumpectomy because it will make you look deformed because of where the placement is. And so she started talking to me about a mastectomy, but I knew instantly when I was diagnosed that I didn't want any. I wanted them gone because I didn't want to take a chance on it developing in the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was fine with that. But she said, I don't think you're going to have treatment. I think we can get all of this from where it's located. But we will do some testing, and you know, we will know more once you have your surgery. So, and I will say this too, and I forgot to say this early on. I got diagnosed the day before mine and Eric's 15th wedding anniversary. So, that was another kind of thing, because it's always kind of been a shadow over our anniversary now, because it's like, how many years has it been since I got diagnosed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've dealt with it pretty well for the most part, because I'm thankful to be here and thankful to be alive.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got diagnosed on September the 21st of 2016. By October the 12th, I was having a double mastectomy and
Wow.
the start of reconstruction surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So, got that done, and within a week I was meeting with the surgeon again to find out the results, and unfortunately she took 6 lymph nodes as well as the breast tissue, and 2 of those had cancer in them. So at that point I did not have any choice but to take chemo and radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So met with my oncologist again, and she decided that she wanted to do 8 chemo treatments
Mm-hmm.
and 32 radiation treatments. So lots of doctor's appointments of going back and forth, just, you know, to prepare, because I fell apart when I heard the word chemo. To me, that was, I don't want to say a death sentence, but it was a lot to absorb. I was excited and happy when the surgeon first told me that I wouldn't have to have treatment,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought, great, I'm going to beat this. It's going to be fine. But then when it came back that I did have to do treatment, it did something to me mentally. It started to make me grieve my own mortality. And I think a lot of women that go through, or men as well, because men can get breast cancer, but
Mm-hmm.
anybody that has to go through a life-altering event like that, and you have to face your own mortality, it really does something to your psyche and your brain. And I heard someone say the other day that they had cancer, and they ended up having to go speak to a counselor for grief. And I never really thought about it that way. I thought, okay, I probably need to go talk to somebody just because it's a lot for me to deal with by myself.
Mm-hmm.
but I never really thought about having to do counseling for grief of myself. So, so that was an interesting part of my journey. I had my surgery mid-October, and we had found out that Eric was getting transferred to Dyersburg. So we were coming back to Dyersburg. We had actually always said we would never move back here, but our family was here. And so, and with my mom with us, I kind of felt like it was God's timing. I was supposed to come back here because where did that opportunity come from? And so it's like, okay, well then with Maddie being in 8th grade, we were torn because she had already started her 8th grade year when all of this was, diagnosed. And so do we take her out before the semester is even finished at Christmas, or do we wait and let her, let her finish her last year of middle school there and then start her here in Dyersburg at the high school? It was a lot of turmoil for her, as you can imagine, being a 13-year-old girl, 14-year-old girl that didn't want to lose her friends, didn't want to lose the life that she knew. She had not grown up in Dyersburg. We moved when she was 3. So, it was just a huge adjustment for her. And so we made the decision that Eric would come back here and that Mom and I and Maddie would come back when she was done in May.
All right. Just thinking. You lost your father.
Yes.
Eric lost his father.
Yes.
Within 40 days of each other. You find out that you have cancer. You were diagnosed same year.
Yes, within 6 months of him losing his father, yes.
Not only that, but then you find out that, now you have to go through chemo and radiation.
Yes.
And then, by the way, Eric's being transferred.
Yes.
Back home.
Yes.
While your daughter is an 8th grader.
Yes. Yes. And people wonder why I'm crazy.
Wow.
But I think, personally, if it had not been for my faith in God, if it had not been for the love and the support that I felt from my church family, from my work family, from my family, we had family that would drive up there, especially my sister-in-law, Beth, Eric's sister. She lives in Memphis, but I can't tell you how many times she drove the 6-7 hours to get there, to take me to chemo, to take me to doctor's appointments, because she wanted to be part of my journey. Let me know that I was being supported. So in saying all that, Eric did move back to Dyersburg before Christmas. It was hard on our family. He tried to come back every 2 weeks, but there was just, and I tried to do my chemo on the weeks that he wasn't going to be home, because I didn't want him to see how bad I felt. And so I did one chemo treatment in November, the week before Thanksgiving. And as a Southern girl, we love some turkey and dressing. And unfortunately, that was a tough Thanksgiving. He came home for Thanksgiving, but I didn't get to enjoy my food like I typically would. Yeah. But so I guess about a week or 2 after that, I realized I had an infection on the right side that just would not go away. It was almost like a little blister, like just on the inside, right on my sternum. And so I had gone to the doctor several times to, have it drained and have it, looked at, and they'd put me on all kinds of antibiotics, and nothing was just, it just wasn't doing anything. And of course my oncologist was like, as long as you're on these antibiotics, we are not doing chemo, because your immune system is so low now as it is. The few chemo treatments that you've had, we have wiped out your immune system. So I ended up I went to see an infectious disease doctor because he wanted to make sure, are they treating it right? It was some rare bacteria that they rarely see, like in Africa or something. It was just weird. And so I'm like, great. I never win anything. Here I'm the winner of breast cancer and rare African bacteria. And so my plastic surgeon finally said, I think it'd be best if we took your expander out, because that is what they put in at the time until you're done with chemo, just to kind of prep you for the reconstruction. But he said, I think it'd be best if we took that one out so that your body can heal itself, and it's just fighting itself. And so we went in and we did that, and he said what had happened was, in the process of me having the double mastectomy, somebody had nicked, and I don't know who it was, had accidentally nicked a piece of cartilage on my sternum. And so when they did that, this bacteria, wherever it came from, attached itself to that. And so until he got in there and got it all cleaned up and removed the expander, it wouldn't allow my body to heal. And so by the first of the following year, I had one expander, and that was really, really devastating for me because my body at this point was really, really deformed. And not that I really even cared what they looked like. It was just the fact that I didn't look like a woman anymore. So Eric was home the weekend after I'd had that surgery, and I could finally get in the shower. And so when I was able to take the bandages off and see what my body looked like and how deformed it was, I instantly fell apart. It was just, I think it was a culmination of just everything I had been fighting for the last 3 months, and just trying to put it all together in my mind and stay strong for Maddie and my mom, and just because it was just, I was in the fight for my life, basically.
Absolutely.
And so needless to say, I didn't run the half marathon that year just because I had other things going on, but
to say the least.
Yeah. But I was so thankful that I had my body in the best condition of my life, because it allowed me to fight this fight that I was, going through. I was at my ideal weight. I was eating clean. I was working out. The whole 9 yards. And so I just kind of had to drop that for a while and just, focus on myself and my mentality.
Sure.
So I fought that for a while, and then in January of 17, I was able to pick up the chemo again and start back with that. Well, in the meantime, I was starting to lose my hair. And so I was a hairstylist for 20 years.
Boy.
And so, not that I was vain by any means, because at one point, in my early career, I would have probably shaved my head and been fine with it, just because I was always doing something, But, I don't know, when I started losing my hair, it was very, very hard for me. And Eric was here, of course, in Dyersburg, and I was home with my mom and with Maddie. And, I had gotten in the shower and started to brush my hair, and it was just big clumps of hair coming out, and I just started to cry. And I thought, I don't know what to do. And so I love my mother, and I appreciate her so much, but there's just something, there was a disconnect there for me and her, and I don't know what it was. I almost felt like I was the caretaker for her, and it was not her fault. It was just in my mind. And so I text Maddie, because of course you know how teenagers are. You can't just, yell for them and they come. You've got to either call them or text. Well, I'm not even going to say call, text. So I text her and I said, can you come to me? And so she did. And when she came in, I just remember sitting there with this hair in my hands. And of course I was crying, and she gave me the biggest hug. It was just the biggest warm hug. And she said, Mom, your hair is not what makes you beautiful. And so for me, that was like, why is this kid so smart? she's 13. Where did this come from? But she became one of my best friends through the journey. And I didn't tell her a lot of the specifics of it. But I knew she was always there to give me a hug and to tell me I was going to be okay. Even being my daughter and my child, I never allowed her to go to treatment with me because I never wanted her to see any of that.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to have a good group of women around me that supported me and that were great friends. And they took turns taking me to treatment. And so I finished my treatment in May, and Maddie was just getting finished with 8th grade, and of course we had sold our house, there, and we're buying a house here, and so, yes, and the movers were there, and so I guess about April, we had sold our house there, and so the movers came to pack up our house, and my best friend had a basement that was finished, and she said, please come and stay with me. You and Maddie come and stay with me. Because by this time, my mother had came back to Dyersburg since she knew we were coming back. And so she said, please come and stay with me and let Maddie finish school. And then you don't have to worry about your house, your boxes, anything. So we did that, which was great because my best friend, like I said, is a nurse, and she was wonderful. And so we did that, and then the day Maddie finished 8th grade, I drove to my surgeon's office, and she took my port out, and I was just praising Jesus the whole time because I knew my chemo was done, and they were going to let me take the port out because they knew it was done, and I was not going to have to worry about this anymore. They were going to let me do radiation in Dyersburg, so I was so very thankful for that. I can't tell you how many times I laid in bed and cried and I prayed. I was in constant prayer for over a year, just constant prayer. And I remember kind of questioning God, but I also grew up with the mentality of you don't question God. He will tell you the answers in His time, not yours. But I was a very bad, I don't want to say bad, but I had gotten in the very bad habit of, like, I would pray in my car on the way to work every day before I was diagnosed. And I've always really had a hard time of knowing what to say to God and how to pray. And so I would just say what I considered to be a blanket prayer, watch over my children, comfort my mother, that sort of thing. But the elementary school that I worked at when I got diagnosed was one of the poorest elementary schools in the state. And so there were a lot of kids there from drug homes and just low poverty homes and that sort of thing. And so every day I would think of them, but I would say to God, just let me be a blessing to somebody. Just let me be a blessing to somebody today. And there was another specific prayer that I would pray, and I can't remember it because I feel like God answered that through this journey. I've tried to really concentrate and think, what was that? What were the words that I would say? But it's almost like He's wiped that clean from my memory because it's like, okay, I answered that prayer. I don't want you to say that anymore. So that's kind of been like an aha moment a little bit. But, so we moved back to Dyersburg. I did my radiation. It was fine. And we got Maddie through high school. And now she's grown and lives on her own. And I'm so proud of the woman that she is. I'm proud of my sons and the families that they have created and the men that they are. But for a good 2 years, I battled every day. And so, in talking to my oncologist, I did not leave her when I moved back to Dyersburg for over a year. I just could not do it. I would drive the 4.5 hours to see her. I just felt like she had done so much for me, and she had provided so much care and just solace. She just would sit and talk to me like I had known her forever, like she was my friend. And so I just could not make myself get a doctor in this area. But I finally did, and in 2018, I chose a doctor from the West Clinic in Memphis. Went there and did not have a good experience. I felt like I was a number.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was a burden of his time. And so I picked up the phone and I called Kirkland Cancer in Jackson, and I've never regretted it.
Mm.
I'm getting the care there that I had when I was in Indiana. It was such a hard decision for me to leave her because I was scared. She had told me that the type of cancer that I had was very aggressive, and not only did I have one type of cancer, I had two. I had ductal and lobular, and that at some point in my life it will return. It is going to metastasize at some point. I could be 80, but and that's what I hope. But I could also right now get in my car and drive across the street and have an accident and die.
Right.
So I don't dwell on that.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, I have really, really struggled, especially early on after my treatment, because I did not know how to I didn't know how to manage me because I wasn't the same person. And I kept telling myself that I was not going to allow that experience to define me.
Mm-hmm.
Breast cancer has defined me. I don't have a label on my forehead, and I don't have stickers on my car, and I don't, put it all over Facebook. I had a private page that I allowed certain people into that I could share my journey with. Because as I found out when I moved back to Dyersburg, there were a couple of women that I knew here that had just experienced getting diagnosed. And I just felt like it was everywhere. And I thought, is this the South? Is it the person? I didn't want to look at it like that because I don't think on their aspect it was like it was being advertised. But it was like, look what's going on with these people, and we need to rally around them. And here I was with, stubble this much, and nobody asked questions, and nobody said, what's been going on with you? We haven't seen you in 11 years, and, surely you've never shaved your head this short. Why would you do that? But, it slowly started to get out that, I was a cancer survivor as well. I dealt with a few issues, Maddie's freshman and sophomore year, because I guess it was more of a hurt feelings thing, because when it would be recognized in October, at games and such, I felt like I wasn't recognized. Not that I wanted to be, but, it was just like, well, what about me?
Mm-hmm.
I've had this journey too, what am I? So it was a mental thing for me. So I kind of had to learn how to get over that, because I didn't want anybody feeling sorry for me by any means. I just wanted, I don't even know that I wanted people to acknowledge my experience. I don't know. I just wanted to be better mentally, and I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I had several conversations with Corey, and he was great to talk to, and he did make some recommendations, and so I've been very thankful that the doctors that I have for my care now, I see every 6 months. I mean, even though it's been almost 7 years, I go every 6 months, just because it was so aggressive before.
Sure.
And I'm very thankful to be back with my family. That has been a great thing for my healing, especially. I think it's been hard for my husband to realize mentally what I have dealt with, because as a man, he wants to fix it. And I tried not to be negative the entire time. I wanted to be positive, but there were certain things I didn't have a choice but to be negative over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes that was hard for him to grasp, because he is a pretty positive person, and so I think he just kind of thought, well, if you think positive, it'll be positive, that kind of mentality. But But anyway, I am here and I'm alive, and I know several women that have had the same journey that I have. We share a lot of similarities, and we are all, I don't want to say cured, because you're never cured from cancer, but we are, there's no evidence of disease, so, we're in remission, and I try to be positive every day, and I wake up every day and I thank God that I'm alive. I won't say that I don't think about cancer every day, because I do. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and it's the last thing I think about when I go to bed. But my faith never wavered. I knew from day one that God had me in His hands, and that He had a purpose for me, and I don't know what that is still to this day, but I know I've had several people reach out to me since I've moved back and have asked questions, and I don't want to be and I don't want to overbear them with the things that I've gone through, but cancer didn't run in my family. It did. I'm the first person ever in my family to have cancer.
I'm looking at your life, and in particular 2016, and I see someone who's grieving 2 deaths, and then knocked for a loop and grieving yourself. And but you mentioned several people that I see God using those people, from your oncologist to your daughter to your family, pastor that you went to the church and prayed. So that's where God was in the midst of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you spoke of your mother, that your relationship, that both of you were grieving.
Yes, absolutely. And it was hard for us, I think, to comfort one another, because she was looking at me like I was her baby. I was her child, and that she needed to take care of me, where I'm the type of person that I'm not necessarily an introvert, but I am not an extrovert. So I like my space. And so when I get in my head, I just need to be alone. And it's not a bad thing. It's just I have to process myself. I need to have time to think about it. I need the quiet. I cannot deal with overstimulation. I know that. So it was okay for me to retreat to my room and just to try to process it by myself. I think that she saw that sometimes as that I was in a bad place, or that she wanted to help and I wouldn't let her, that sort of thing. She and I have actually never really sat down and talked about it, but I hope when she sees this video she kind of understands that, it was just a private thing for me.
Sure.
So, and I will say, and it breaks my heart to say this, but my oncologist, I found out in January, I loved her so much, and she took her own life in January, and she saved so many people and did so much for people, and I did question God about that and why was that necessary. But then I felt like she was so overwhelmed by all that she had done for so long that it was just heavy on her. Because to meet her, you would have never known that she had maybe even thought about taking her own life. But it was very devastating for me when I found that out, because I felt like I'd lost a friend.
Yeah. So
it just seems to just keep going. It's just another line to the story. I don't want that to be part of my story, but it was just a shocking thing for me to discover about her, because she saved so many people. And two of my friends that I became friends with in Indiana, that we all kind of went through treatment and everything together, were also her patients. And so it was nice after everything was settled that we could go back and sit down and say, she saved our lives, and we're so thankful for that. But yeah, time and time again, God has shown me his presence. And it's funny because I kind of struggled with sharing publicly like this. I had done a newspaper article for the State's Gazette in October and shared some. There were some misquotations in there, and so it's not like you can fix that. I was also asked by Vanderbilt, there was a study going on where you told a story and they did like a video and they set it to music, and so it was like some kind of grant program that they were doing for their breast cancer unit. And so it was me and another lady from, I think she was from East Tennessee, but we worked together with like a moderator, and so we did that, and I told the story of when I lost my hair. And so it's a pretty moving video, I have to say. It's maybe not even 2 minutes, but I was proud of it. I felt like I worked hard on it. So they have started sharing that in their unit with breast cancer patients. And I think they do it now about every 6 months. They find survivors to talk with.
If you could tell someone who's facing this right now, if you could tell them one thing, and then I really don't like those questions. I don't know why I'm asking it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What piece of advice would you give someone who's just facing cancer or facing an illness? What would you say?
I would probably first ask them, do you believe in God? How is your faith in God? Because he is the ultimate healer. And so no matter what treatments I took, no matter what medication I took or surgeries I had, he was the one that was going to decide how much more my body dealt with, how much more my mind dealt with. So I would say be your own advocate, medically especially, because I had to learn so much about my own care that, especially after I moved back to Dyersburg and was trying to find another oncologist to go to in Memphis. But you absolutely have to, have strong faith in God, and just like I said, you have to be your own advocate. And I mean, I'm still finding that out to this day. If you have a question, ask. I kept a running list of things because, and I still do that to this day, because of the chemo and the medication that I'm on. My memory is horrible. I'll be in mid-sentence and can't remember a word to tell you, and it could be like grass, and I'll have to say, the stuff that you mow. But that's frustrating. I've had several people, I think, get the impression from me that, oh my gosh, she's so stupid, because she can't verbalize, she can't talk about, certain things, and then my memory just goes out, and then as, a 52-year-old woman now, and I'm still working, and I work in an office setting. I've told my boss time and time again that he is a wonderful boss, and I appreciate him so much, but I know there are days that he gets frustrated with me because I feel like it's the simplest task, and I'm like, how did I do that? I don't remember how I did that. So I've had to, I take a lot of notes. I have a lot of Post-its, on my computer. I have a binder that's about this thick, just to remind myself. So that's been hard for me.
Yeah.
But I will say, I've been doing a Bible study on Thursday nights with Angie Hamilton and some other women, and it has been such a good experience to be in a small group. And we have started sharing some stuff between ourselves at Bible study. But last week, I was on the fence about asking you for me, to let me do this. And I kid you not, and this is such a God thing, one of my day's lessons, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong. It was a passage in our workbook because we do 5 days, and I believe it was on the 4th or 5th day. Now I gotta find it again. I apologize. Okay, here we go. I went to do my work for that day, and one of the paragraphs that the lady that has written this Bible study says is, God delights in allowing us the privilege of experiencing spiritual victories. When we refuse to allow anyone to share our personal battles, we risk 2 negative consequences. We often lengthen the battle. Can you imagine how many days the Israelites would have needed to slay the Amalekites if they were victorious only when Moses could muster the energy to lift his staff? Without a doubt, teamwork hastened the victory. And number 2 negative consequence was when we do not ask for support, we, what is that word? I can't even say it. I'm sorry. Cheat others of the joy of victory. So that last sentence really hit me when it said, when we do not ask for support, we cheat others of the joy of victory. Because I wasn't sharing it publicly. And so I just felt like, even though I wanted to keep it private and it be my business and, my story, I was cheating others from not knowing the struggles that I went through. Because in all honesty, had I not had a relationship with God, it would not have turned out well. Because mentally I was in a dark place for a long time.
Absolutely. Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
So that's God's story. And I want to say this because I know that like the battle and all of that tends to try to define us. But cancer doesn't define you, because you're a beloved child of God, and cancer has tried its best to try to take that from you, but it can't.
Absolutely.
And that's God. And that's God. And thank you so much for your willingness to share, and thank you for staying strong in the faith.
Yes.
I will ask, what would be your fight song now? I didn't want to ask that, but after you said that too.
I will say, early on, Carrie Underwood had just came out with a Christian album, and one of the songs that she did on there was, and see, I'm having a brain issue.
No, it's okay. Now. It's okay.
I have to look. You're gonna have to cut this out. Let me see what it is. Oh, How Great Thou Art. That's what it is. How Great Thou Art. And she does a beautiful version of it. If you've never heard it, listen to it, because it is like, I've always been one of those people that I get so much out of Christian music and just gospel music. I love old hymns, and I love contemporary Christian music. It's on in my car all the time, and but something about her version of How Great Thou Art just struck with me. And so I can remember the day I was going for surgery the first time to have my double mastectomy, and I had my earbuds in, and we were driving the hour down to Evansville, and it was on repeat. And so I sat in the car with my eyes closed, and I prayed, and I listened to the words of that song, and I sang them over and over and over. And so there were times in the car when I would cry, and I know my husband was like, what is going on with her? But so when they got me ready for surgery and prep for surgery, and they were wheeling me back, I will never forget looking up at the doctors, and they were getting me ready to go under, and closing my eyes and just praising Jesus that he was great. He is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I will always praise him. In the bad, in the good, in the negative, in the positive, I will always praise God. So, and I can't wait to meet him.
Amen.
So,
Amen. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, Tiffany, again for sharing a story that has no doubt shaped you. Thank God for giving us that story.
you're very welcome. Thank you for letting me share.
See you next time.